So, welcome to the deep dive. Imagine for a second that you're planning a classic heist.
Right.
You're unrolling the blueprints on this big table, and the target, it's static. Like the casino vault isn't moving anywhere.
Yeah, the museum security cameras are just, fixed right up there in the corner.
Exactly. I mean, it's essentially a math problem, right? The variables are known, and you just have to solve for X.
Right.
But imagine if the vault was actually moving. Like, imagine if the security system was alive and adapting and actively hunting you while draining the power grid all around you.
That completely changes the math.
Totally. Suddenly those static blueprints are just completely useless. You aren't planning a heist anymore. You're orchestrating a localized war in real time.
Which is the exact scenario laid out in the archival document we are unpacking today.
Yeah, it's a wild one.
It really is. We're looking at a file titled train-to-nowhere-a.pdf, and specifically, we're focusing on a section labeled Omens, Foretold, Chapter 12, Part 5 Alpha.
That's a mouthful.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It carries a subtitle, Aneurysmics-Train to Nowhere.
And, I mean, the timeline surrounding this document is just a puzzle of its own.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the events described in this narrative, they take place on April 11th, 1994. Yet, this file was only discovered just last month, March 2nd, 2026.
Yeah.
It operates almost like this weird time capsule,
Yeah.
containing this highly detailed tactical blueprint for, well, human-machine combat.
Right. And our mission today is to really deconstruct this narrative. We are going to examine the operational planning at play here.
The strategy.
Exactly. Specifically how the characters blend environmental awareness, asymmetrical military strategy, and human-machine collaboration to neutralize just this overwhelming threat.
Okay, let's unpack this because the scale of it is crazy. Let's start with the immediate threat that forces this whole operation into motion.
Yeah.
The narrative opens with an enemy force encroaching on a military encampment. But they aren't just marching across the map.
No, they're actively consuming the infrastructure.
Right.
So the primary tactician, this guy named Benedictus, and the local commander, Captain Monroe, they're tracking an EMF, an electromagnetic field disruption pattern.
Right. And it originated in the southeast sector, like at the absolute edge of their detection range.
Exactly. And it's moving northwest, carving this direct path toward their main encampments.
And the text notes that this enemy has this terrifying capability, right? They draw extra power from external lines and equipment whenever they need it.
Yeah, it's highly advanced.
Think of this enemy like a massive invisible parasite just moving across a digital grid. Every time it feeds, a node of communication just blacks out.
They're losing contact with their outer outposts sequentially.
Just going dark one by one. The enemy is devouring the communication infrastructure as it approaches, creating this total blackout zone around itself.
Which creates a severe tactical disadvantage. I mean, the enemy is highly advanced, incredibly power-hungry, and numerically superior.
So what do you do?
Well, in a situation like this, standard military doctrine dictates that you cannot fight force with force. You have to look at the variables you can actually control.
Right.
And Benedictus realizes his greatest asset isn't weapons or manpower. It's the environment, specifically the absence of light.
Because if you're fighting this Goliath that feeds on the power grid and relies on advanced technological sensors, I mean, your ultimate weapon is zero visibility.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how Benedictus applies highly precise astronomical data to his military strategy.
It does the math.
He does. He calculates that at exactly 16:16:00 hours, a new moon will occur.
Wow.
Furthermore, he charts the lunar illumination, noting that it won't even reach a 2% threshold until 6:45 a.m. the following morning.
So he maps out the lunar cycle down to the minute to secure exactly 14 hours of near total darkness.
Right, because in an incredibly unpredictable battlefield, you have to anchor your strategy to absolute certainties.
And the moon isn't changing.
Exactly. The rotation of the Earth and the phase of the moon are absolute certainties. They have a 14-hour window where the enemy's visual sensors will be severely degraded.
But to exploit that window, they need personnel. And a document details Captain Monroe's encampment, and it's a massive logistical operation.
It's huge.
Yeah, there are 24 men in his immediate detail. Outside, at least 60 troops are handling heavy logistics.
Vehicle maintenance, weapons cleaning.
Hand-to-hand combat training, perimeter watch. And then inside the large tents, there are roughly 40 more personnel.
Right.
So we're looking at a well-trained, heavily armed force of over 120 people.
Yet Benedictus makes a fascinating strategic choice here. He leaves the vast majority of them right where they are.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he keeps them stationed at the encampment and the remaining outposts as backup.
Which totally counters basic instincts.
Yeah.
I mean, the instinct is to throw everything you have at an encroaching threat.
Of course, but think about it. If he moves 120 men, he creates a massive thermal and acoustic signature.
Oh, right. The enemy would detect a troop movement of that size instantly.
Instantly. By leaving the camp's daily routine completely undisrupted, he masks his actual counteroffensive. He is opting for a surgical strike team.
Because Benedictus knows that a 14-hour window of darkness leaves, like, zero margin for error.
None. Guesswork will be fatal. This necessitates an immediate transition to the war room to construct a perfect, manipulatable model of the battlefield.
And the scene inside the HQ tent is so vivid. You have this large table in the center, dry erase boards, a projection screen.
Humming generators.
Yeah, boxes of ammunition and stacked weapons. It feels really gritty and grounded. And lying flat on the center table is a map.
But it is a 3-year-old military topographical map. It relies on easting and northing coordinates.
We should probably define that for a second. Easting and northing coordinates are essentially a static grid system used by artillery to hit fixed, immobile targets.
And that highlights the limitation of human intelligence in this scenario. A static grid system is completely useless when you're fighting an enemy that actively moves, consumes infrastructure, and alters the landscape in real time.
It's out of date the second you look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The map shows static elevation, but it cannot show current enemy deployments, newly fortified infrastructure, or, active threat ranges.
So to solve this, and here's where it gets really interesting, Benedictus asks Captain Monroe to drop the canvas sides of the tent to plunge the room into darkness.
Right.
Then he calls forward this unit named Damont. Damont steps up to the table, scans the 3-year-old paper map in a matter of seconds, and projects a real-time 3D holographic overlay directly onto the projection screen.
The projection dynamically updates the static data. Damont adds the rail lines, the enemy communication exchanges, the heavily fortified enemy compound, and all the grade elevations.
It's incredible.
He synthesizes an outdated piece of paper into a perfect 3D model.
But the massive catch here is that Damont isn't human. He's an advanced, reprogrammed enemy robot.
Yeah.
He's a recon unit that the humans previously captured and managed to turn. Even Captain Monroe has to constantly remind himself that he is talking to a machine and not a human soldier.
It creates such a stark juxtaposition. You have human soldiers relying on dry erase boards and canvas tents, trusting their entire operational blueprint to a piece of captured enemy hardware.
See, I have to challenge this strategy. As someone reading this tactical breakdown, this seems like an incomprehensible, fatal vulnerability.
Oh, it's incredibly risky.
They're fighting a technologically superior enemy whose defining trait is hacking systems and draining power. And their entire operational blueprint is being generated by a reprogrammed enemy robot.
Yes.
If it's a captured unit, how do they know the enemy isn't using Damont as a Trojan horse to feed them false data? I mean, they're betting the lives of a surgical strike team on a black box they cannot possibly fully understand.
Well, that is the terrifying gamble of modern asymmetrical warfare. You are highlighting a massive risk, but consider the alternative.
Which?
Human cognition simply cannot process the real-time variables, EMF disruptions, and topographical changes fast enough to outmaneuver an AI-driven enemy.
So they have no choice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they are betting that their localized, hardwired reprogramming of Damont overrides the enemy's remote network. It is an air-gapped trust.
Wow.
Benedictus knows that to defeat a technologically superior force, you have to weaponize their own momentum against them.
Right.
By synthesizing the outdated static map with Damont's real-time digital rendering, they create a new, actionable reality. They take their greatest vulnerability, which is their reliance on enemy tech, and turn it into the ultimate advantage.
It is the ultimate trust exercise. I mean, they had to trust Damont's 3D projection to identify the primary artery of the enemy's supply chain.
Yes.
And the map reveals that the artery is a heavily fortified rail line. The first phase of this counteroffensive requires them to steal a moving train.
Which is where the tactical breakdown becomes incredibly granular. Benedictus analyzes the train's defenses.
And they're intense.
Very. Monroe confirms that while there are usually only 2 human operators in the front engine, the train itself is essentially a rolling fortress. It is heavily rigged with monitoring sensors, cameras, and automated telemetry.
So a physical assault by a small strike team on a moving fortress would just be suicide.
Absolutely.
But Benedictus finds the vulnerability not in the train's armor, but in its physics.
Yes, the topography.
The topographical projection shows a specific grade crossing. Because of the elevation and the curve of the track, the train simply cannot maintain its speed.
Right.
It is forced to bleed momentum and slow down to 35 miles per hour to safely navigate the crossing. That drop in speed is the only viable window of opportunity.
And to exploit that window, Benedictus designs a highly specific dual-layered trap.
This part is so cool.
He requests a deployment of 12 men initially, with 2 drivers on standby, but he specifically dictates that they leave their tactical gear behind.
Yeah, they're deploying in hard hats and reflective vests.
Exactly. They are bringing road signs, barrier markers, cones, and a heavy construction backhoe.
Picture the staging of this. Benedictus positions these men meticulously. Groups of 2 are placed exactly 1 mile west and 1 mile east of the crossing.
Right.
Another group is placed 3/4 of a mile on the southwest side of the tracks, and another group 1 mile past the crossing. Finally, they have a long-nosed semi-cab parked directly across the train tracks.
They're disguising a military roadblock as a mundane, blue-collar construction site.
It's basically a hybrid of a blue-collar construction site and an Ocean's 11-style cyber heist.
That is exactly what it is. It operates like a magician's misdirection. The physical roadblock, the reflective vest, the flashing lights, the semi-cab on the tracks, that's the flashy hand waving in the air.
Right, look over here.
Yes. It forces the train to stop and focuses all the attention of the 2 engineers on the track ahead. But the other hand is quietly picking their pocket in the dark.
The digital siege.
That other hand is Damont executing a total digital siege.
Because if they just stop the train, the onboard sensors will immediately alert the enemy command that the supply line is under attack.
Exactly. The physical roadblock only works if the train is completely digitally isolated.
And Damont doesn't wait for the train to arrive at the crossing. While the train is still like 3 or 4 miles out, he hacks into the positive train control system.
Yes.
He manipulates the wayside signals, turning them red a half-mile out to force the train's automated braking systems to engage.
He manually disables the crossing gates so they don't trigger local alarms.
And most importantly, he loops the train's external security cameras several miles back.
The psychology of this trap is staggering. The true genius isn't the physical roadblock, but the sensory deprivation of the enemy.
Yeah, feeding them a loop of normalcy.
The 2 engineers in the cab and the enemy commanders watching the feeds back at base, they are just seeing an empty, peaceful track on a continuous loop.
Wow.
The GPS telemetry is spoofed to show the train moving at normal speeds. If the engineers realize the track is blocked by a semi-cab and try to radio dispatch for help, Damont intercepts the radio transmission.
He responds in his synthesized voice, pretending to be the dispatcher.
Exactly, assuring them that the construction is scheduled and to hold their position. They don't even know they've been robbed until it's too late.
Benedictus and Damont are weaponizing the enemy's reliance on their own sensors. The engineers are sitting in a stopped cab, looking at gauges that tell them everything is fine, completely unaware that their supply line has just been severed.
And the physical theft itself requires incredible mechanical precision. Once the train is stopped, the strike team isn't taking the whole thing.
No.
They are going to physically decouple 50 of the train cars in pitch darkness.
Which is a massive feat of engineering sabotage.
Oh.
I mean, train cars are connected by heavy steel couplers, but more importantly, they're connected by a continuous pneumatic brake pipe.
Right.
If you simply pull the cars apart, the brake pipe severs, the air pressure drops to 0, and the emergency brakes lock up on every single car, making them impossible to move.
The strike team has to manually isolate the air valves, decouple the steel knuckles, and bypass the pneumatic brakes on 50 massive steel cars without triggering the locomotive's pressure sensors.
And while the human team manages the physical physics, Damont manages the digital physics.
Yes.
Removing 50 loaded cars instantly changes the mass, the drag, and the electrical resistance of the entire train. The locomotive's onboard computer would immediately detect the loss of drag and trigger an alarm.
To counter this, Damont feeds the onboard computer ghost data. He continuously simulates the electrical signature and drag coefficients of the missing cars.
Unbelievable.
He forces the system to believe that all 70 cars are still perfectly attached and fully functional.
It is a masterclass in information warfare. You blind the enemy's cameras, you alter their physical reality by cutting their train in half, and then you feed their computers a digital lie to keep them complacent.
The operation is a staggering logistical achievement.
Which brings us to a moment in the text that completely shifts the scale of the narrative.
Oh, this part.
After laying out this synchronized dual-layered attack involving a reprogrammed cyborg, physical misdirection, and ghost data, Benedictus looks at Captain Monroe and casually states that the train is the easy part.
Yes. The heist is merely a precursor. It is a logistical necessity to facilitate the actual assault.
If stealing 50 heavily monitored train cars out from under an advanced AI network is the easy part, the actual assault must be near suicidal.
Benedictus reveals the real targets. The enemy's communication network is decentralized.
Okay.
There are 3 outer exchanges located northwest, north, and northeast along a perimeter arc. Deeper inside enemy territory, there is a main communication hub, heavily fortified inside a walled complex.
And military doctrine states that highly connected networks are self-healing. If you attack one node, the other nodes will instantly reroute power and deploy reinforcements to defend it.
Therefore, a sequential attack would fail. The assault must be executed in parallel. All nodes must be hit simultaneously so the network cannot heal itself.
So the strike team splits up. Damont, the reprogrammed robot, is tasked with breaching the main walled complex alone.
Right, his robotic physiology allows him to infiltrate the heavily fortified hub.
Simultaneously, Benedictus and Monroe lead the human strike teams to assault the outer northwest and northeast exchanges.
But Captain Monroe introduces a massive unknown variable into this final phase. He warns Benedictus that while they haven't encountered them in this sector yet, the enemy likely possesses advanced aerial robotics.
Drone swarm.
Drone swarms, exactly.
And Monroe's countermeasure to an advanced drone swarm is just wonderfully resourceful. He doesn't have anti-aircraft missiles.
No.
He has his men rigging up large, remote-controlled model planes.
Which is actually a brilliant piece of asymmetrical logic. Think about it. An advanced enemy drone relies on complex RF signatures, thermal tracking, and digital hacking to neutralize threats.
Right.
An RC plane is essentially a dumb mechanical missile made of balsa wood and cheap servos.
It has no complex digital signature to hack.
Exactly. It flies completely under the radar of advanced cyber warfare.
It is low-tech brute force countering high-tech precision. So what does this all mean? Even with these countermeasures, Monroe questions the viability of the plan. At the end of the war room meeting, Monroe looks at Benedictus and says, "You told me this would go extremely well, but now you're saying the hardest part is yet to come."
And Benedictus answers him with a core philosophy of modern strategy. He says, "I did say it would go well. I didn't say it would be easy and without great risk." He guarantees that the plan will require modification along the way.
I just find that so ironic. We just spent the entire document watching these men plan an operation down to the exact percentage of lunar illumination, the specific speed of a train at a specific curve, and the exact placement of traffic cones.
Right.
Yet the lead architect cheerfully admits that the plan is going to shatter once the shooting starts.
This raises an important question about the vital difference between a rigid plan and strategic adaptability. Benedictus demonstrates the paradox of strategy.
How so?
A rigid plan assumes you can predict the enemy's actions. When the enemy deviates, a rigid plan shatters, and the team paralyzes. Benedictus isn't planning to prevent chaos.
He knows it's coming.
Exactly. He is building a structural framework designed specifically to absorb the chaos when the plan inevitably breaks.
Right. He assigns Damont to continuously scan the perimeter for enemy robot kill units.
Yeah.
He isn't doing this because he thinks they can avoid them.
No, he fully expects the kill units to arrive.
He is using Damont's scans to buy his human team a 3-second warning to improvise.
Preparation does not eliminate risk. Preparation dictates the speed at which you can adapt to failure. Benedictus controls the variables he can, the phase of the moon, the speed of the train, so that when the variables he can control suddenly appear, his team has the mental bandwidth to react.
The blueprints only get you inside the moving vault. You have to rely on your framework to survive once the walls start shifting.
Exactly. Whether you're managing a corporate project, organizing a massive event, or simply navigating a chaotic week, the lesson here is the balance between meticulous preparation and mental flexibility to adapt when the enemy changes the rules.
This tactical breakdown leaves us with a really profound lesson regarding the nature of information and trust. And it centers entirely on the concept of ghost data.
The operation only succeeds because the enemy implicitly trusts the data on their screens over the physical reality outside their windows.
Yeah.
Damont feeds them a digital simulation of a 70-car train, and they accept it as absolute truth. completely unaware that 50 physical cars have been severed and stolen.
It forces you to examine the architecture of your own daily reality. I mean, we navigate our world through a layer of digital mediation.
We do.
We trust our GPS when it tells us a road is clear. We trust our bank monitors when they display our balances. We trust our communication feeds to accurately represent the voices of our colleagues. We operate with complete faith that the data presented on the glass in front of us aligns perfectly with the physical world.
It is a vulnerability inherent in any advanced system. The more automated our infrastructure becomes, the further we are removed from physical verification.
So here's the thought to mull over. If the systems we rely on were compromised by a subtle, intelligent force if the screens you are looking at right now were feeding you a continuous loop of ghost data, how long would it take for you to notice that the physical reality had shifted?
How long would you sit in the cab trusting the gauges before you realized the back half of your train was already gone?
The line between a secure system and a sensory deprivation trap is incredibly thin. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the archives today. Stay adaptable, always verify your data, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.